Most people trying to fix their blood sugar are doing it backwards. They are cutting carbs, skipping meals, eliminating entire food groups, and grinding through restrictive weeks only to watch their numbers barely move or bounce straight back the moment they eat, like a normal person again. Nobody asks whether removing things is even the right strategy. What if the problem isn't what you're eating, but what you've never bothered to add? I've watched patients come in frightened, fasting numbers sitting at 170, 180, already on one medication and being told they need a second. And within weeks, by adding specific foods in a specific way, their numbers start falling, not for a month, for years, without starving, without giving up the meals they actually enjoy. I'm going to walk you through all 10 of these foods and explain what each one does inside your body. Not just what to eat, but why it works. So you carry this with you and don't need to come back to a video every time you're standing in a grocery aisle. Welcome to Optivara Life. Here's something that rarely gets explained in a standard appointment. High blood sugar almost never starts with blood sugar. It starts with a hormone called insulin. Insulin is a key. Its job is to unlock your cells so glucose, the sugar in your bloodstream, can get inside and be used for energy. When everything is working, insulin knocks, the cell opens, glucose enters, blood sugar stays steady. But after years of spikes and crashes and processed food and bad sleep, the cells stop responding. Insulin knocks and the door stays shut. That's insulin resistance. The pancreas tries to compensate by pumping out more insulin. Blood sugar climbs anyway, and the standard fix is a prescription that adds even more insulin into a system already drowning in it. There's no malice in that. It's just that a 12-minute visit doesn't have room to explain how specific foods can talk directly to your insulin receptors and start reversing this from the inside. That's what Optivara Life is here for, and that's what we're doing right now. Every food on this list works through one of three things. It slows the rate sugar enters your blood. It reduces the inflammation physically blocking your cells from hearing insulin's signal. Or it wakes the receptor up so your own body can do what it was built to do. You don't need to overhaul everything tonight. Bring these in over 2 weeks. Let them stack. Start with fenugreek seeds. Small, hard, amber-colored, a couple of dollars in the spice aisle. Most people walk straight past them. The seed is packed with a soluble fiber called galactomannan. The moment it hits the fluid in your stomach, it swells into a thick gel. That gel physically slows how fast your stomach pushes carbohydrates into the small intestine. Slower means the sugar trickles into your blood instead of flooding it. No flood, no panicked insulin spike, no crash an hour later, where you're shaking and reaching for something sweet. Fenugreek also carries an amino acid that helps the pancreas release insulin more efficiently and nudges muscle cells to pull glucose out of the blood. Soak 1 teaspoon of whole seeds in a glass of water overnight. In the morning, drink the water and eat the softened seeds before breakfast. If the bitterness is too much, grind them and stir half a teaspoon into yogurt or sprinkle over eggs. Start small. This fiber is strong and the gut needs a few days to catch up. Cinnamon is next, and you probably already have it. But what's in your cupboard right now is almost certainly the wrong kind. The common grocery store version is cassia cinnamon. It works, but it contains a compound called coumarin that can stress the liver when you take it every day for months. What you want is Ceylon cinnamon, sometimes called true cinnamon, milder, safer for daily use, and worth the switch. What makes cinnamon do anything at all is a group of plant compounds called polyphenols. They behave almost like insulin themselves. They help receptors grip glucose more tightly, and they slow how fast the stomach empties after a meal. Research from the USDA's Human Nutrition Program found that less than half a teaspoon a day measurably lowered fasting blood sugar in people with type 2 diabetes. A quarter to half a teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon in your coffee or oatmeal is all you need. Pair it with a carbohydrate-containing meal, because that's exactly when you want those receptors working. Broccoli sprouts are third, and this is the one that surprises people the most. Not regular broccoli, the tiny 3-day-old sprouts. That distinction is not a small detail. Broccoli sprouts contain somewhere between 50 and 100 times more sulforaphane than a full head of mature broccoli. Sulforaphane does something none of the other foods on this list do quite as directly. It goes to the liver and quiets down the overnight glucose factory. Your liver makes sugar while you sleep. In a healthy metabolism, that process is tightly controlled. In insulin resistance, the liver overproduces, often badly, which is why so many people wake up with a high fasting number they can't explain after 8 hours of not eating anything. A 2017 study from Lund University in Sweden gave concentrated sulforaphane to people with type 2 diabetes and saw measurable drops in fasting glucose, with the strongest results in the people whose numbers were hardest to control. Grow them in a mason jar on your counter for almost nothing, or buy them in the produce section. A small handful on a salad or sandwich most days is enough. Don't cook them at high heat. It kills the active compound. Raw or barely wilted. Avocado is fourth, and a lot of people are still avoiding it because of the calorie count. That hesitation is genuinely costing them results. The fat in an avocado is monounsaturated, the same family as olive oil. When you eat half an avocado alongside rice or toast, you're not touching the carbohydrate. You're slowing down how fast it converts to blood sugar. The fat and fiber work like a brake on the digestion of everything else on the plate. Glucose rises gently instead of spiking sharply. Monounsaturated fat has also been shown to improve insulin sensitivity over time. Cells start opening the door a little faster. Half an avocado a day. On eggs in the morning, mashed onto whole grain toast, or sliced into any meal that already has a starchy element. Wherever there's a carbohydrate, avocado softens what it does to your numbers. Chia seeds are fifth. Tiny, cheap, and people consistently underestimate them. If you've ever watched chia sit in liquid and slowly turn into thick pudding, you've already seen what it does in your digestive system. One of the richest sources of soluble fiber you can find. In your stomach it forms a gel that wraps around the carbohydrates in your meal and slows their absorption down considerably. Sugar enters the blood slowly and steadily. You skip the spike and crash cycle that leaves you shaky and hungry an hour after eating. Chia also has plant-based omega-3 fat that helps calm the quiet, persistent inflammation underneath insulin resistance. 1 to 2 tablespoons a day. Stir into yogurt, drop in water with lemon, blend into a smoothie. Give it 10 minutes to gel before you drink it, and make sure you're drinking enough water alongside. Fiber needs liquid to move. Fatty fish is number 6. Salmon and mackerel specifically. This one doesn't slow your meal down. It works on the deeper reason your cells went quiet, to insulin's signal in the first place. Insulin resistance is substantially driven by chronic inflammation. When the body runs at a low level of inflammation for years, that inflammation physically interferes with how the insulin receptor functions at the cell surface. Salmon and mackerel are loaded with 2 omega-3 fatty acids called EPA and DHA. These reduce inflammatory signals, the cell membrane gets healthier, and the receptor starts doing its job again. 2 palm-sized servings a week. Wild salmon, mackerel, sardines, herring, all work. Canned mackerel and sardines are some of the cheapest foods on this entire list, and just as effective as the expensive cuts. 7th is walnuts. Of all the nuts, this is the one worth prioritizing for blood sugar. Walnuts are rich in polyunsaturated fat and the same plant-based omega-3 found in chia. That fat improves the function of the endothelium, the thin lining inside blood vessels, which is one of the first things sustained high blood sugar begins to damage quietly. The combination of fat, fiber and protein in walnuts also blunts the blood sugar rise after a meal, and research has shown they lower fasting insulin, the number that tells you how hard your pancreas is working just to keep up. A small handful instead of crackers or a biscuit takes a blood sugar spike and flattens it. About a quarter cup, 7 to 10 whole walnuts, raw or dry roasted, not the candied kind. Use them to replace a processed snack, not to pile on top of one. Whole eggs are 1/8, yolk included. For years, people were told the yolk was the problem, and that pushed a lot of people towards sugary cereals that were far more damaging. A whole egg is almost entirely protein and fat, with next to no carbohydrate. On its own, it barely moves your blood sugar at all. But the bigger benefit is what happens to the rest of your day. Starting the morning with eggs instead of a cereal steadies your blood sugar not just at breakfast, but through to lunch. You walk into your next meal with calmer numbers and a smaller post-meal spike. The protein and fat keep you genuinely full, so the mid-morning pull toward something sweet fades on its own. 2 or 3 whole eggs in the morning. Scramble them, boil a batch ahead for the week, fold in some spinach. Put the avocado from earlier on top, and you've built something that actually holds. Apple cider vinegar is 9th, and this is the one with the most immediate visible effect. If you have a glucose meter at home, you can watch this work the same day you start. The active ingredient is acetic acid. It slows the stomach from emptying, so carbohydrates arrive in the bloodstream gradually rather than all at once, and it helps muscles pull glucose out of the blood and burn it for fuel more efficiently. Research led by Dr. Carol Johnston at Arizona State University found that a tablespoon of vinegar before a carbohydrate-containing meal reduced the post-meal blood sugar spike by roughly 20 to 30% in people with insulin resistance. 1 tablespoon diluted in a full glass of water, 10 to 15 minutes before your biggest carbohydrate meal. Always dilute it. Straight vinegar is rough on tooth enamel and the throat. If you're already taking blood sugar medication, talk to your doctor before starting this, because the combination can lower your numbers faster than either does alone. Lentils are 10th, and they make the whole point of this video better than anything else on the list. Lentils are a carbohydrate, and they will bring your blood sugar down. The reason is how they're built. Resistant starch wrapped in soluble fiber with a solid dose of plant protein. That structure means the glucose inside a lentil gets released slowly over hours, not all at once. They also carry what researchers call the second meal effect, where a bowl of lentil soup at lunch keeps blood sugar steadier well into the evening. Swapping white rice or white potato for lentils a few times a week is one of the most reliable changes I know for bringing down an A1C over 3 months. Half a cup to a cup of cooked lentils a few times a week. In soup, in stew, cold, in a salad with olive oil and a splash of that vinegar. Filling, cheap, and they stretch a meal further than almost anything else here. Here's why all 10 of these work together, when cutting carbs alone doesn't. The fiber foods, fenugreek, chia, lentils, slow the glucose down so the pancreas never has to panic. The salmon, walnuts, and chia cool the inflammation that was blocking the insulin signal. The cinnamon and vinegar help the receptor grip. The eggs and avocado stabilize the whole foundation of your day. The broccoli sprouts quiet the liver overnight. Do that meal after meal, week after week, and the cell that stopped answering the door slowly starts opening it on the first knock. That's what reversing insulin resistance actually means. And once it happens, the body holds blood sugar down on its own, not because of a medication propping it up, but because the system is working again. One thing needs to be said directly. If you're currently on insulin or a sulfonylurea medication, these foods can lower your blood sugar fast enough that your existing dose becomes too high and pushes you into a hypoglycemic episode. Add these foods with your doctor, watching your numbers, and let them adjust your medication downward as things improve. Don't stop any prescription on your own. Bring this list to your next appointment and have that conversation. Tonight, soak a teaspoon of fenugreek seeds in a glass of water. Tomorrow morning, swap the cereal or toast for 2 or 3 whole eggs and half an avocado. That one change affects your blood sugar for the entire rest of the day, not just breakfast. Pick up Ceylon cinnamon this week and start a 1/4 teaspoon in your morning coffee. Before your biggest carbohydrate meal tomorrow, take a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in a full glass of water 15 minutes beforehand. And at least twice this week, swap white rice or potato for lentils and get fatty fish on the menu 2 evenings. You're not removing anything you enjoy. You're adding what protects everything else. That's it for today on Optivara Life. If this gave you something a standard appointment never did, share it with someone in your family who's dealing with the same thing, because most people fighting these numbers have never had it explained this way. Subscribe to Optivara Life if you haven't already. Every video here is built the same way. The real biology, the practical steps, no filler. There's a video linked on the screen right now about why your fasting number is sometimes highest first thing in the morning after a full night of not eating. It explains exactly what the liver is doing overnight and how to address it. Go watch that one next.